Dear Sri Balagopal is going to chair this meeting. Professor G. Moluni, Mr. Subramaniam, my scholars from GIFT, my colleagues, and the friends of GIFT who have joined online for this important seminar on an issue of much contemporary relevance to Kerala. And of course, it is also very important for the country as a whole. We are going to have this particular seminar on entrepreneurial ecosystem, theory and empirical reality in India. The seminar is going to be presented by Professor Jimol Unni. And when we were thinking of a person who could chair this meeting, all of us had only one person in our mind, and that was Sri Balagopal, for obvious reasons. In fact, I have a very difficult task of introducing the speaker of the day and the chairperson, Sri Balagopal. Why I said it's difficult? Both of them are so much prominent in their respective area of expertise. And I can even talk for another 1.5 years about both these individuals. And that might defeat the whole purpose. So, but at the same time, when I am talking about welcoming, my job is a very minimal job. It's of welcoming. It's very important that I say at least a few important aspects of our guest of the day. To begin with, the speaker, Professor Jimol Unni, who is currently the professor at Ahmed Modi School of Management in the Ahmedabad University. Her earlier positions, just before that, she was the director of IRMA. And prior to that, she was a professor in Gujarat Institute of Development Research. And I must say that there is something that bonds us together because we have the same alma mater. She was my senior, with due respect. I must welcome you by highlighting some of your important achievements as an academic. I must say that everything that an academician would like to aspire are there in the biodata of Professor Jimol Unni. Author of 6 highly rated books, numerous publications in the national and international journals, important positions, be it in the member of the Niti Aayog committee and expert group on liberating data for monitoring policy and monitoring that is appointed by Niti Aayog. Then, I don't want to talk about various committees. She is also in the board of number of academic institutions. Till recently, under her leadership, she was the chairperson of the Indian Labor Economic Association, and in Itanagar, the recent Labor Economics Conference, much was talked about it. It's a great gathering, and I can keep on going in the soft and hard terms. Let me stop at this. And Professor Jimol, I must also place on record, I was under the impression that you were here when you were participating so actively in the PhD orientation program, but you were online. That simply means that your online or offline presence doesn't make a difference. We most warmly welcome you to this seminar, and also I must thank you for agreeing to deliver this particular seminar. Okay, welcome to you. Now, as I said, we could not have got a better person than Sri Balagopal to deliberate on this issue and to chair this issue. Sri Balagopal is a very different person, that's everybody says, but I would say he is unique. Why? Because, today's newspaper, you have read about IAS toppers, and he was 1976 IAS. Within a matter of 6 years, he resigned from IAS, a very rare event, make him unique in the first point. Then he started an industrial unit in Kerala, a place which is known to be nothing would happen. That is the general feeling. And he took the technology not from an established foreign company, but from Sri Chitira Tirunal Institute of Medical Science and Technology, an unproven technology. He took it with the help of NRDC, KSIDC. He developed that unit to today, something like 1,600 people working in that unit. It became a joint venture with Thermo Penpon. This is the largest company in the world making blood bag systems. And he doesn't stop there. He's currently the chairman of the Federal Bank. And he has written, his IAS experience, he has written us 2 important books, which I found it very fascinating to read. One was On a Clear Day, You Can See India in 2013. And the view from Kollam, a day in the life of a sub-collector. And under the then Sri Chandrasekhar, he worked for the Civil Supplies Corporation. Maveli and Markets, another book. And his latest book, which is with me, I have a copy of it, Below the Radar. He explains that in India, in Kerala, manufacturing is possible. In the last Kerala budget, only 2 individuals' names were announced. Only one was AKG, and second was Mr. C. Balagopal. Our Honorable Minister quoted him, and he cited his book in his. So, Sri Balagopal, thank you. I know you were here more than once, and we were very fascinated by your jokes and your insights. The way in which you put things is very different. And I would like to have a discussion on this book in the near future over here. And I most warmly welcome you to this gathering. Now, I think I must also note the presence of Mrs. Padma Subramanian. I'll be very brief about her. Again, you can go on talking. She is my guru's wife. And here is the typical case of how a supervisor's wife should be. In fact, I know my supervisor is a very tough person, and hers also, in fact. And she was a shock absorber. No, you do not know. I think this is an occasion for me to place on record our thanks to you, my thanks to you, and also it is a lesson for. I think I'll stop here. Padma Ben, thank you and welcome to you, and of course to all my colleagues and our students over here. There is no major welcome, but you know that you are always welcome, and also to the friends of GIFT who have joined online. So I think I took 8 minutes. I was thinking of 7 minutes. 1 minute exceeded. With my apology, I request Sri Balagopal to chair this meeting and conduct the proceeding. Over to you, Sri Balagopal.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. I hope I am audible.
Very much audible.
Okay. Thank you. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to participate in a seminar, economic seminar, on a very, I would say, a rare subject, which is entrepreneurship, because we rarely come across this in the economics discourse. And that's very unusual because the entrepreneur is sort of omnipresent in every sector in the economy, but somehow neglected in much of the literature and in the economic discourse. Entrepreneurship has been long recognized as an important factor in economic development. And in a world which is increasingly dominated by uncertainty, the role of the entrepreneur in identifying new opportunities, pulling together the resources that are available and implementing those new ideas to exploit the new opportunities is now a matter of record, and especially in the last in the post-World War II era, we see very distinct phases which are where they can clearly see the driving force that entrepreneurship has played. Of course, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens within a framework of public policy. And so this is something which is, I think, constantly we need to keep at the back of our minds, because entrepreneurship doesn't happen in a vacuum. Just like economics doesn't happen in a vacuum. Economies function within a social and political context and framework. And the role of public policy is often forgotten while we tend to elevate and even deify. Today, the flavor is to deify entrepreneurs and make them out to be almost mythological superhumans. But the point is, they mostly, they have a very important role to play, but this happens within the framework and a platform provided usually by public policy. Now, in the literature, there have been many attempts to explain entrepreneurship, and mostly they have been found to be wanting in one respect or the other. I'm sure there are those of you who are present here are far more competent to discuss the theoretical efforts to understand and explain entrepreneurship. But I think somebody put it best, I'm not sure, I think it was probably Schumpeter, who said that it is a meta-economic phenomenon which is influenced by and in turn influences the economy, but cannot be explained within the economic system. So, I don't want to get too much into the definitional part of it. Now, the very interesting part of it is the entrepreneur's instrument or tool of trade is the firm. The entrepreneur creates a firm, a business entity, and through that business entity implements his or her ideas. What is interesting is, therefore, while the concept of the firm needs an entrepreneur, the theory of the firm in the literature does not mention an entrepreneur anywhere. And not only that, when we come to the working of the firm itself, it's very mysterious. Maybe my reading and understanding of, it's from a long time ago when I was a student of economics. But in the theory of the firms, in some mysterious way, factors of production come together in a production function, and somehow product emerges from that. And all along we are told that the allocation of resources happens thanks to the unseen hand, the invisible hand. So every day, the mythology of the firm is that within this system, there is a constant negotiation between sellers and buyers going on. And that is how the allocation of resources happens within the firm. But actually, is that the case? The firm is a very defined entity. It's a legal person. It owns resources, owns property. And within the firm, my experience is all decisions happen by fiat, by administrative fiat. There is no market forces at work within the firm. So within the firm, say whether it is a firm of 10 people or 10,000 people, and whether the revenues of the firm are 10,000 rupees a month or 10,000 crores a month, the allocation of resources, etc., which happens within this entity called the firm, happens by fiat, by administrative fiat. And economic theory has very little to say about that. Has almost nothing to say about that. So, therefore, I see huge areas which are waiting for people like I mean, all the young people gathered here today, and the paper presenter, Jimol Unni, people like her, scholars like her, to come and fill in these gaps and improve our understanding of how does an enterprise work, how does production work, how does a firm work, how does an economy work, and and hence then we'll be able to probably understand the role of the entrepreneur. Just one more point I will say before I hand over the floor to the speaker is, let's just take an example of Kerala. Professor K.J. Joseph referred to my recent book, Below the Radar. The subtitle of that is The Untold Story of How Modern Manufacturing Grew by Stealth in Kerala. Now, there is a deliberate use of certain words there, which I won't get into now. But the point of it all is very interesting. These 50 enterprises which I have listed out in this study, and some of which are mentioned in some detail, and two of them who are studied in more detail in 2 chapters, these 50 are all in manufacturing. They all were started after the late 1980s, and they were started mostly by first generation industrialists. So some of them came from planting families, some of them agri families, some of them came from trading families, some were like me, ex-bureaucrat, ex-official government employee, etc. So there was very little common between them. Second, they all started small. They were not part of a family enterprise. They all started as what today would be called startups, with very little capital, like 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs capital raised by the promoter and the rest raised through borrowings. And they have all grown to, over the years, organically grown to significant size. The company I started today is about 500 crores, employs 1,500 people in the factory, and is today recognized as one of the largest single location manufacturers of blood bags in the world. It exports its products to 50 countries. Other few examples. So there are other successful examples, like in very diverse fields, like PK Steels is regarded today as India's most efficient specialty steel castings manufacturer, has a turnover which is probably around between 750 and 1,000 crores. Employs again more than 2,000 people. Most of the products are for export, specialty castings, and the buyers list reads like a who's who of the world's top engineering companies. Then there is a company like SF4 Technologies located at Kakinada, which is one of India's largest hardware electronics exporters. If one discounts the Wistrons and the Foxcons and these completely knocked down imports which are just assembled and then labeled as manufactured in India, if one ignores that, the largest electronics hardware exporter from India is SF4 Technologies in Kakinada. And they manufacture very high-end electronics imaging equipment for the healthcare sector for important clients like GE and Philips of Holland, etc. So my point here is, through some very mysterious alchemy, in the 1980s and 1990s, they came up a set of entrepreneurs in diverse fields, from diverse backgrounds, and starting enterprises which were in completely unconnected fields, without any local availability of raw material, local availability of any traditional manufacturing skill in those areas, etc. And yet, the enterprises they started have turned out to be successes at the national level and at the global, some even at the global level. So here is a phenomenon which definitely needs further. I have not attempted the much bigger task of finding how this happened. I think people like Professor G. Moluni and many of you who are present here today need to look into this. This is a very productive area for research, because based on these research findings, we will have better public policy then which can come forward to ensure that the correct conditions are created for more such units to come up. Anyway, I'm looking forward to much more light being shed on these and related subjects by this paper on a very interesting subject, entrepreneurial ecosystem, theory and empirical reality in India. And I am sure that Professor Jimol Unni will share her considerable scholarship and research in the subject, and will leave us much better enlightened at the end of her talk. But one more brief word before I hand over is about the ground rules, which I discussed with Professor Joseph before this. Since we have a hard stop at 1 p.m., I understand that the paper presenter will have between 30 to 40 minutes for her talk, and this will be followed by a Q&A. And the rules for the Q&A will be informed. Not very onerous rules. It is just that those who wish to raise questions raise their hand, and Professor K.J. Joseph will decide on the order, because he being present there will decide on the order in which of the questions can be taken. So without further ado, I request Professor Jimol Unni to go ahead with the paper presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Joseph, for this very kind introduction, and Professor Sri Balagopal for all this very interesting discussion. And Professor Balagopal is a true entrepreneur, so I can hardly say anything to you which you don't know. And I'm not going to speak so much about the the mysterious workings of the firm. I'll speak more about the mysterious workings of the entrepreneur, actually, because there is an ecosystem, but then how does the entrepreneur work on that ecosystem is, do I have something to press with? Yeah. So yeah, I'm at Ahmedabad University, and I've been there for some time now. This one? Okay. And this, how does it go back?
What is this? Back in front of the
Yeah, back
just down.
on the working Lilo.
Okay.
What okay?
Up. It's right. Backward. The back page.
It's a phone Lilo. Phone. Okay. Fine.
You want somebody to operate from there?
No. I prefer to speak myself. Right. Okay. So since I have a stop line as well, and I'm a professor, so I can speak for hours. But I'd like to change your ground rules a bit, and you're most welcome to ask at any point in time when the question strikes you. So yeah, I will. So why do we talk about entrepreneurs, and what is my interest in entrepreneurship? First and foremost, we all know that. So I have this book, Women Entrepreneurship in the Indian Middle Class, with the 3 authors actually, and all spread all over the world: Vanita, Ravikiran, and Swati. We started this book when I was in IRMA, and it took a long time. We wrote it and rewrote it, and the reviewers of the journal, the book publishers, they asked us to rewrite it and so on. So there are many chapters in this book which talk about different segments of the entrepreneurs and the enterprises, the large enterprises, the formal, informal enterprises separately, and also about the entrepreneur. So I'm actually picking up one of the chapters in this book. I hope, Joseph, you have bought this for your library. If not, you should. So, and Sri Balagopal, I would also suggest it's available online.
You take the other copy.
Yeah, I don't have a copy. Yeah, I'll send you one. So it's available on Amazon and everywhere. So anyway, so India, we know, so I'm a labor economist. So I view this from the angle of employment, of labor, and so on. And we know that employment and unemployment is one of the biggest problems that we are facing. And the formal sector is running out of the capacity to, produce more jobs. It should be producing more good jobs, but it's not necessarily doing so. When that is the case, this government and even I think that entrepreneurship is one of the ways out. It's just Sri Balagopal was just saying, People start small and then they are able to expand. But that requires a particular kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem around which supports them. That's on one side. And on the other side, it also requires a particular kind of individual. Now, I can never be a businesswoman because I just don't have that in me. So we will be looking at some of the traits of that kind, which now, why my interest in entrepreneurship? I've always been interested in the very small enterprises because I think that is the small enterprises which are left out in policy. They are even not considered as entrepreneurs. They're considered as self-employed, with the result that there are fewer and fewer policies which address them or support being given to them. And also, let me say that a lot of these are such small enterprises could be women. They would get categorized as self-employed and then ignored. They will be categorized as home-based and ignored. And so then they are not there in the policy dialogue. They are not there in the in the system which can help them. The other reason why and that has been my struggle all the time, even if I'm talking about definitions of formal, informal, I would focus onto this segment of the people, because even the workers get more support. There are trade unions which support them. There are member-based organizations which might support them. Not that they're doing very well, but still. But when it comes to the self-employed and own account enterprises, they're just not important. And as economists, if they die, we are happy because it means that they're inefficient in the economic theory. Those small enterprises that die, good, they are inefficient. So let them disappear. What happens to that human being? What happens to that entrepreneur? So that's one of the reasons why it doesn't get the policy support that it should be getting. The other reason why I started is that, first and foremost, data on entrepreneurs' enterprises is very limited. So I, in this book, have used various data sources. And the one that I'm going to talk to you about today is the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is worldwide. So I've taken the India data. At that point in time, we were using 13, 14 data. It comes out every few years or every year, maybe, in different countries. So that's the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. And in that year, it was seen that India was at the bottom in terms of the proportion of entrepreneurs that we have. Nothing to do with men and women, just general entrepreneurship we were ranked one of the lowest in that thing. So then my question was, why is it that we are so low when all other countries are having so much more proportion of entrepreneurs? Where are we? So what is that reason for that? Also, of course, my consistent belief that, you need to focus your attention on the smaller enterprises as well. Improving their scale, their technology, improving their scale requires improving their technology, credit availability to them, and also support in terms of training and so on. And, some kind of government assistance and support as also comes out in some of our results in this book. So that is my reason for having gone through all this. So now to come to what the literature says. So this team of researchers which did this book, we had management people in it and economists. So we have reviews on this thing, which are being reviews on entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurship, which are cited very heavily these days because there are a lot of people working on entrepreneurship now. So a lot of that is looking at the management literature. So if you look at the, I think I have skipped some. Is this going back or forward? This is going forward? Sorry, I'm getting confused. All right. Right. So the traditional economic models predict that people are entrepreneurs based on the returns. So the returns they get, this is a traditional economics kind of argument. If the returns they get from entrepreneurship is higher than wage employment and salaried employment, then they will take up entrepreneurship or they will set up an enterprise. But this was questioned in the literature in the United States long ago and later on by many others. That in reality, only a few entrepreneurs really succeed and most of them fail, or they just remain there with very low incomes, meager returns. So the puzzle there is, why do these enterprises which get low returns remain there? I mean, why do they remain there as enterprises? Why don't they shut down? As economists will be happy, like I said, if they shut down, because they're inefficient. So this puzzle actually contradicts the normal entrepreneurship theory that entrepreneurship is pursued purely because they find an opportunity and there is a profit orientation and a motivation for that. But in reality, there could be a whole lot of other reasons why entrepreneurship is taken up. Now, in the management literature, they basically look at entrepreneurship at using two core questions they ask. Who starts a new business, and what are the non-financial preconditions for? That means, is it innovation or is it an opportunity, or what is the reason why they started entrepreneurship? And most of the management literature is then looking at that. And then they broadly came to a consensus that, entrepreneurship is the creation of new activity. So it goes around that whole thing. Is it innovation or is it an opportunity that they found the reason why they started entrepreneurship? It's not moving. Oh, all right. So that was the management literature. If you look at our chairman spoke about Schumpeter. Now, Schumpeter is one of the persons who is said to have spoken first about entrepreneurship in the economics literature. All right. So on Schumpeter, so economists attribute the idea of entrepreneurship to Schumpeter. In 1934, in the Theory of Economic Development, he said that the key role of innovation by entrepreneurs is the reason why and how a dynamic change takes place in the economy. Because he was basically talking about business cycles. Why do economies fall down? Why do economies grow? And if they go down in a depression, then how do they come up again? That was one of the business cycles is what Schumpeter was trying to look at. And he speaks about what he calls creative destruction. That is, enterprises should also die out and then new ones should be coming. And that would be the impetus for the business cycle to turn, to go down and come up again. So innovative entrepreneurs is the key to the process of reviving an economy. You're pumping in something into the economy and that economy revives again. That's the way he looked at it. But so he defined an entrepreneur as a person who is willing and able to convert a new idea or an invention into a successful innovation. And that is the essence of entrepreneurship, is the discovery of new economic opportunity. So he's basically the two things again, innovation and opportunity. And that's how a new business comes into being. But at the same time, he defined entrepreneurs into three categories. And these three categories were innovation entrepreneurs, arbitrage entrepreneurs, and need-based entrepreneurs. Let's go to Schumpeter, right? But according to him, innovation entrepreneurs are the actual entrepreneurs because they create that disequilibrium in the economy and forces a revival of the economy. Arbitrage entrepreneurs are basically who are entering it. It's like they're like brokers. They enter it when they see the event there which they can take advantage of, and they're entering it. Need-based entrepreneurs are the people who are doing it because they are constrained by various things in society, including maybe their education levels. They're not able to get into a formal labor market, or they're not able to get into a proper job. And so they take up entrepreneurship. And ultimately, this is very, very common in developing countries. So need-based entrepreneurship will partly explain why do entrepreneurs persist with running businesses for such long periods of time, even when they are getting very low returns to the entrepreneurship.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I just have a observation. So when we say,
Please introduce yourself, please.
yeah,
Unless it's a clarificatory question, if you can reserve for the end, if it is a clarification, please go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say about need-based entrepreneur, is it like addressing a need of the society or the economy, or just for just like another for his living, he is taking
Yes.
entrepreneurship?
Correct. As need-based entrepreneur is that person who is doing it out of necessity.
Okay, so he's not addressing a need or anything of the
No.
society. Okay,
Right.
okay, sure. Thank
The management literature also talks, so the idea of women entrepreneurship didn't exist at all. It was considered as a neutral. Entrepreneurship is neutral.
you. Okay.
Till the 30s, till the 70s. I'm not answering your question. I'm continuing with the, but then the management literature found that entrepreneurship is not so gender neutral. It is gendered. And entrepreneurship is can be embedded in families. So to that extent, they are constrained and also pushed, both pushed and pulled by the families and the society in which they are existing. And entrepreneurship can then result from a necessity as well as from an opportunity. So you can have entrepreneurships pursue the goals for something beyond economic gain. They might be pursuing it partly because of a need and partly because they see some social reason for undertaking that enterprise. So when you're looking at women entrepreneurship, something that we strongly argue in this book, it doesn't just matter that he is going to go for an opportunity or this thing. There's many of the women-based are kind of social enterprises. They're going for that because they find something which the society requires needs to be done, and they go for that. I'll give you a couple of examples of that towards the end of the thing, because we also did a number of case studies which are there in this, spread out in this book as well. So, like I said, in traditional neoclassical economic theory, the choice of an entrepreneurship is based on an expected utility function. I don't know how many economists are here in this room, and that you're gaining from the income for work under the conditions in which you are working. But then there are people who have distinguished between entrepreneurship's attitudes and entrepreneurship abilities. So developing the choice of being self-employed based on a utility maximization model of human behavior. So an individual behavior that they identified were attitude towards your work, attitude towards risk, attitude towards wanting to be independent of an employer, and also based, of course, on the income, which is the traditional economic way of looking at it. So we are now going to look at models where we take up these characteristics of the individual entrepreneur and look at why the person could be taking up entrepreneurship from the side of the behavioral traits of the entrepreneur. And what I've written down here are some of the results in the last thing, which also Douglas and Shepard are showing. So we are trying to explain the puzzle of why do people enter and remain in entrepreneurship, even if they are getting low returns, all right? And there are a series of authors there who have talked about this. And there's this very interesting paper in the Journal of Economic Perspectives. If anybody is interested in, Journal of Economics Perspectives often gives reviews of topics. Forget about entrepreneurship, the topics that you people are working on, also you should scan the Journal of Economic Perspective. Sorry, every now and then I turn into a professor. So, so the three characteristics that we talk about why they might continue in entrepreneurship. One is, of course, a preference for risk, because they get a utility out of taking the risk itself. They are less risk averse and are attracted to the possibility that taking more risk will give you more gains in terms of incomes, returns, and so on and so forth. They can fail as well by taking more risks. The other thing is that maybe they're just overconfident. They just think that they're more self-confident and more overconfident, and they just think that they have the ability and the entrepreneurial ecosystem around them is good enough for them to be able to start an enterprise and continue. Even when they are going with low returns, they still have this confidence that they have the ability and the optimism with regard to the conditions which are existing, because ultimately this whole entrepreneurship, as our chairperson was trying to say, it is based on what is happening inside the firm, yes, but it is also based on what is happening in the macro situation. So when you have a boom, you'll see more entrepreneurs as well, because everybody is going up and this fellow is also going up because the demand overall in the country is increasing, spoken like an economist. And so the supply of various commodities to take care of that booms up. So you see that, but you can have that kind of an optimism, these entrepreneurs who continue with their activity, even if it is not such a good business environment, because they think that they have the ability and the capacity to be able to go through that. Makes him ignore the fact that the entrepreneurial ventures can fall, or they can start small and never scale and just remain small. There's a possibility, but that some internal trait in them makes them continue to be there. And the third thing that this literature talks about is the non-pecuniary benefits of being an entrepreneur. So that is generally explained in terms of, I want to be my own boss. Now, I live in Gujarat, and I've lived in Gujarat for a very, very long time. Now, Gujarat is the place for self-employment. I never saw self-employment entrepreneurship as I saw it in Gujarat. If you go from Kerala, you'll see the difference. Every single human being has some business by the side, even the ones that used to work in my institute. If nothing, they'll buy something cheap and sell. They will buy this cheap and they'll sell it. And what is the spirit of the entrepreneur? I'll never do anything if somebody pays me 1,000 rupees. I'll do it free, but I won't do it for 1,000 rupees. But these entrepreneurs who are basically doing trading, they, even a 10 rupee thing on this pen makes 2 rupees also on this pen is something to, to create an enterprise out of. And then from that, they can grow or not grow. So stationery, you can buy and sell and so on. But one of the things that help them, this non-pecuniary benefit, is one is that I want to be my own boss. I'll do this, but and earn little. Now the share market, why does it work so well in Gujarat? Because they are willing to, buy and 2 rupee badega. If it goes up 2 rupees, they'll sell and then they'll buy again. If you ask me if I'm getting 2 rupees, will I buy? No, I won't. Thank you. Well, what do I do with 2 rupees? Sort of thing. But then that 2 rupees plus 2 rupees plus 2 rupees, they become millionaires, and we become just what we are today. never go any place. That's an entrepreneur who has this instinct, to be take advantage of a situation, and also the idea that I want to be my own boss. What can motivate them is, of course, having mentors, having a mentor, or having somebody who talks to them and they're able to share their fears, and gives them advice on how to. So the role of a mentor is something that is spoken about a lot here. What does this mentor do in the case of these characters who are these low meager returns people? It helps them to negotiate certain uncertainties in the market. Now, even as an economist, you or whatever you people are going to be by terms of as academics, you need to know the field of academics, what's happening there, what can help you, what cannot help you. So if you have a mentor, it helps. Even if your professor helps you, it helps. It is even much more important for the entrepreneur to have a mentor, help him to negotiate the difficult situations that he or she is facing. And so it motivates the person to continue, and to uncertainty, some amount of uncertainty is taken care of through that process. So these are the 3 things, and these are the 3 things which I'm going to get into a model using the entrepreneurship model, global entrepreneurship monitor data. And as most of you are PhD students, others are, aspirants to going for masters and going further up. It might help you to think in terms of how to actually a model. All right. So in this global entrepreneurship data, they actually, you can download it, okay, from their sites. They define 2 kinds of entrepreneurs. So most of the time, the entrepreneurship or enterprise data hardly tell you anything. The enterprise data will tell you what inputs they bought, what outputs they got, what is the profit, and that kind of thing, and it stops here. But this data set, and including the World Bank's enterprise survey data, they have a whole lot of questions on innovation. They define innovation in different ways. So if you use multiple data sets, you can actually, look at different angles of whatever. In this case, I was talking about entrepreneurship. But whatever your topic may be, if you look at multiple data sets, they give you, different variables. Basically, if you're a researcher, you're looking for variables. So you'll be able to look at different characteristics, looking at different data sets. And this particular data set gave us this very interesting questions they were asking about direct questions about opportunity-based entrepreneurs and necessity-based. We use the World Bank enterprise data also to look at opportunity and necessity. And there what we did is we defined, because they had a very, very interesting characteristics of innovators. They were defining innovators in 2-3 ways: product, service, and so on. And then, new product or designer for new product, some things they had. So there we defined opportunity entrepreneurs as those who had had an innovation, and we opted for some parts of that innovation, and then we looked at opportunity. But here they're directly asking this question: the main or partial motivation for taking advantage of a business opportunity, or those who are seeking better opportunities than their current jobs. And the necessity fellows were, main motivation was setting up their own business was due to not having any other choice of work. Those were direct questions asked to the thing. So we used these 2 direct questions to figure out what creates these opportunity entrepreneurs and what creates this, where am I? Yeah, necessity-based entrepreneurs. So this is something that came out of this. So my interest is always in gender. I always have gender as available in anything I do, because it really tells you the component of women here may be smaller. The proportion of women entrepreneurs that you find here may be smaller, but it still tells you a lot about what's happening within the system of whatever system you might. It might be labor, it might be health, it might be education, it might be anything else. But if you disaggregate gender, you'll get a completely different picture for the men and the women. So here we found that the opportunity entrepreneurs tended to be in the upper income distribution. This is the distribution of income on the left-hand side, the y-axis. And these 3 are non-entrepreneurs, opportunity entrepreneurs, and necessity entrepreneurs on the extreme right. So, and these are the male sample and the female sample. So we found that opportunity entrepreneurs were more likely to be in the upper income groups, and they were more likely to be male. Not that much, but still 43% of the male and 35% of the female were opportunity entrepreneurs. And the opposite was true for necessity entrepreneurs. But there still were a lot of men who were opting for entrepreneurship on a necessity basis, 40% of the men and 43% of the women. So basically the better off households were motivated to take advantage of a business opportunity, and the less well-off households tended to engage in entrepreneurship more due to necessity. Might answer the question that somebody was asking. It makes a lot of sense if you just think about it, forget about models, forget about anything. It makes sense because that person from a better off household has more standing power. If you think like an economist, then if you have more standing power, why do you have high unemployment rates in India? In your state? Educated unemployment in Kerala is one of the highest. Educated unemployment everywhere is high, but in Kerala it's huge. Why? Partly because the educated are relatively better off. Here it's not even, that's also maybe not true. And they have more standing power, meaning that they have more capacity to hold on till they get a better opportunity. So they wait for longer. So they're always waiting for that opportunity when they get something which is more equal to their educational qualifications. Okay, I'm just drawing a similarity to this thing here. So if you're a better off household, you are waiting to get a business opportunity to start, and you have more standing power to be able to wait and to go for that thing with a business opportunity. There might be more risk there, but they're able to do it because the house has. It's like, if you come from a business family, the chances of your starting business is much higher. That we have done student surveys in Delhi. It's also part of this book. If you take a look at the book. And there also you see that the ones that come from business families are more likely to say that they want to go for entrepreneurship because that they have the standing power. So they're backing them. Somebody is backing them here. Okay, so what we did was we looked at this global entrepreneurship data, and we looked at it in terms of these 3 choices. You are an opportunity entrepreneur. We defined that opportunity and necessity entrepreneurs. You're an opportunity entrepreneur. It's a multinormal logic, or you're a necessity entrepreneur, or the base category or reference category. You're not an entrepreneur. All right. So this was the model that we ran, where you're a logit with these 3 things, where the submerged category is being a non-entrepreneur. So whether you're an opportunity entrepreneur or non-necessity entrepreneur, based on the question that the entrepreneurship monitor had asked. And you're looking at a vector of owner characteristics and a vector of behavioral traits and a vector of individual firms. So basically what are you doing? You're controlling for his own traits, in the sense that his age, gender, of course, I think we've taken it separately, and yeah, and age and other characteristics of the household. If the income was there, like there might be, that was one of the variables we used. Behavioral traits is what we're going to analyze. Okay, that is our variables of interest. And individual firms, that is the size of the firm, the product of the firm, that is the industry group of the firm. These are all control variables, all right, which you are putting in order to be able to control for those variables, and then look at the variables that is, you are interested in. So these were the three things we were interested in: risk taking, confidence or overconfidence or self-confidence, and non-pecuniary benefits as that of a role model. And we defined, so what do you do if you're doing a model? You have to define variables for these things based on the data that you have. We're not inventing that data. We're not asking the questions ourselves. So risk taking is the capacity of an entrepreneur to take risk, which motivates him to undertake this business activity that may or may not have high returns. So what we defined, again, a lot of the work that you do will become based on the data that you're able to get. So here we were able to, there was a variable called fear of failure. So it is really the opposite of risk taking, right? It is the risk averseness of a respondent. That is, he is less likely to take risk. So fear of failure, having the fear that would prevent him from starting his own business. So now does that risk taking help or not help this opportunity and necessity based persons? Overconfidence, we had two variables. One was the alertness to a business opportunity. That is, you have a belief that this opportunity for business in the area where the respondent lived. So I'll take up this opportunity. So you are confident that you have the capacity and the business environment is such that there is enough demand for that product or service which you are going to start your enterprise on. And self-confidence is was defined as the perception of having the required knowledge, skills, and experience to run a business. So these two variables become our variables to explain confidence, overconfidence. Or why am I saying overconfidence? That is the failing ones, the ones which are not growing or the ones which are necessity-based. They might also be running that business because of overconfidence, in the sense that they continue to believe that they can deal with the situation that they see in front of them. They continue to believe that there is a business opportunity in the area and there is a demand for the product or service that they're going to do. And finally, that role model. There again, you have two things. One is that he wants to be his own boss. And the other thing is that he has someone who started the business helping him, who's a role model, who will help him to negotiate that entrepreneurship, because that procedure of setting up an enterprise and holding on to it is more difficult than even setting it up. And then you have a series of control variables. These are individual characteristics, controls, which I had said earlier: your age, your highest level of educational attainment, the household's income, and whether they were in the lowest, middle, or upper percentile. So that's just controlling for all that, because those three variables on top are the variables of interest to us, the behavioral traits. So these are the results which we can't see too much, but I'll explain it here. So the first trait was risk-taking, right? And don't worry, I'll end very soon. So the women entrepreneurship did not follow the expected behavior of risk-taking. They were less risk takers. The opportunity entrepreneurs were more likely to be the men, and they had less of a fear of failure. But when it comes to necessity entrepreneurships, women were entering the business in spite of the fact that they say that they have fear of failure. So they are risk averse, but they're still entering the entrepreneurship, and they are doing, and those people who are generally, it's a question of how high your significance is and how your value is. Men are also doing that, because there were a lot of necessity-based men entrepreneurs as well. But they, in spite of having risk of failure, they were taking up this entrepreneurship. So mostly risk-taking people were, that trait was more a male opportunity-driven entrepreneur, and they were from the better off households, as I did show you in the graph, where in the better off households were more likely to have men take on opportunity entrepreneurship. So one of the ways to explain this low returns to entrepreneurship is through the fact that these necessity based entrepreneurs are coming from those low income households, And they're taking up this entrepreneurship in spite of the fact of fear of failure. They don't have the risk. They are not risk averse. They are more afraid of risk, but they're still taking it up partly because of this necessity. So when you split the entrepreneurs into these kind of variables, or in terms of whether he's taking up an opportunity or taking up his necessity, then you get a better understanding of why people are there. Everybody is not there because they want to scale. They're not there because they want to make huge amounts of profit. It's a great thing that if they can move from 1 crore to 500 crore, terrific. But even if they can't, they're still hanging on to it. So there are reasons for doing that. And one of these things is this necessity thing. So in spite of fear of failure, you will be doing. So this is one of the case studies we did, Binu Vadera. And she was very interesting. One of the reasons I came to her was that when I was the director of Institute of Rural Management, this lady was a alum. And I met her, alum from the Institute of Rural Management. So she's a very interesting case. What she runs is a cab service for women with women drivers in Delhi, and she calls that Sakha cabs. So she comes from a well-to-do household. She did management at the Institute of Rural Management in Anand. And she worked in various places in various NGOs, including in Uganda. And when she was traveling around, she was also the head of the Action Aid or something in Uganda. But the interesting thing is when she was traveling around, she found that many of the cities were having women cab drivers. And then she came back to India, she lives in Delhi. And then the safety is a huge issue in Delhi, less so in our South Indian states. And so she thought, why should we not have women cab drivers? Now, who knows how to drive a car? And from who wants to be a cab driver unless you're in a lower income kind of scheme? So she decided to have this. Of course, that's her risk. I mean, she decides to take a risk. What she does is she sets up 2 enterprises. One is this thing called Sakha Cabs, which is a for-profit company, okay, which is the company which is running the taxis. And then she set up, now the question is, where do you get women drivers? Because that's her purpose, women drivers for safety of women in Delhi. So she sets up this foundation called Azad Foundation, which is an NGO, not-for-profit organization. She uses Azad Foundation. So now if you're a non-profit, you take grants and so on, and you're running that. It's not on a profit motive. So she gets the women of lower income households who are willing to be cab drivers, trains them to be drivers, and then hires them in Sakha Cab. And then she runs this enterprise. So of course, then there's a long story written about her. She was an Ashoka Fellow. You know, Ashoka Fellows also do entrepreneurship. That is, you get a fellowship from Ashoka Foundation. So Ashoka Foundation, some of the fellows and some of her IRMA, alums helped her to fund particularly this Azad Foundation. The other thing is a for-profit. So you have to run it and make money yourself. So this I thought was a very interesting case of this lady. We have many other such women from IRMA. There was this other lady, she calls it Travel Another India. What does she do? She goes to the communities. I have not taken the case here, but we did that case. She goes to rural areas and she sets up basically a hospitality venture. We visited one of them called Hudko or something like that in Kutch. She gets the community around in the villages to take up this thing. She helps them to set up this enterprise, which is basically a hotel. In Kutch, there were tents. Very often there are tent setups. And then she trains them and all the workers in the village to run a hospitality thing and take up the tourism around that. So Kutch has the white desert and many things that you can see around in and around Kutch.
Professor Unni,
After a while, yeah, I'm running out of time.
Yeah, I think you should wrap up in about 5 minutes.
Sure. And then she hands it over back to the community. Then she leaves. So now these 2 women, they are not those who are looking there. Of course, they found a business opportunity, but they're not the ones who are looking to scale. They're not the ones who are looking for profit. They're the ones who are running social enterprises. So the motive there, even if they might be in some sense opportunity entrepreneurs, they are running it for a different motive, right? So this is the Binu story. And then the other two traits we had was overconfidence and non-pecuniary benefits of having a role model. Almost everyone told us, and also this data shows us that having a role model is one of the behavioral, one of the traits that they require to be able to explain that we explain the necessity entrepreneurs really require role models. But women entrepreneurs almost always emphasize this kind of entrepreneurship. And having everybody, whether they were men or women, they all said that you have to have confidence in yourself and self-confidence to be able to run a business. Definitely. As you won't, like I said, I would never run a business. I don't have that confidence, nor the business traits. And having a role model or a mentor who helps you through negotiating those uncertainties. All this comes out of those models as well, other than the literature. I have another case here, but I will stop. So there's another very interesting lady who started electric vehicles called Ampere Vehicles Private Limited. But I think I will just stop here. Yep. This is the case of Hemalata. Yes.
Okay. So, Professor Unni, have you concluded?
Yeah. So basically, I'd like to say that one is without, so there are other chapters which we've done here where we say that, the informal enterprises, or the smaller enterprises, the small and tiny and micro and motor enterprises you have, those, we have run similar models like this using NSS data from informal enterprises data. They tend to, the ones that expand and which succeed rather than contract and disappear are the ones which get one, support from the government, who use internet, who get internet, who are using internet services actually, and who are registered with a local authority. So all of that means something. It means that they are getting an entity, they are able to go forward and, maybe get loans and so on. So these are some, and support from the government, some kind of an aid from the government helps these kind of people to continue. And the other thing is, of course, networks and social support. So many of the people told us that they had support from their husbands or the family and so on. But then there are also people who said that they were getting support. I have seen a chamber of commerce of various countries, of various states, various towns. They actually start a mentorship program for women entrepreneurs from the women entrepreneurs that they have in the chamber of commerce. And so that gets them to, that helps those women, they mentor them and then help them to set up enterprises and go. So mentorship is a really very, very important thing. After all, you have all these incubation centers. IIM Ahmedabad right next to me has a very, very successful entrepreneurship, they call it CIE, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center. And they use their alums of IIM Ahmedabad to mentor entrepreneurs and startups. So that is done at a very high level. But can we visualize things like that for people at lower level and smaller enterprises and tiny enterprises, which would help? Yeah, I'll stop here. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Unni. I think this has been a very, for me particularly, it has been a very insightful talk that you have given, and many ideas I have taken. I am a incorrigible note taker, so I have already filled up 3-4 pages in my notepad with notes. But and I have so much to ask, but then I don't think that is appropriate at this stage. I want to immediately open the floor to the participants, and I'm sure they'll be having many questions. So I request the participants to ask questions, preferably make it brief and let it be a question, and so that we can give as many people as possible a chance. I would also suggest to KJ, since KJ, Professor Joseph is going to do the selecting of the and curating of the questions, to probably group 2-3 group some questions together so that Professor Unni can respond to them as a bunch rather than each one individually. So over to you, Professor Joseph.
I think it meant over to all of you here, not to me.
Yeah, I meant to the to the
No,
participants.
what Sri Balagopal said is, now the floor is open to you, and please raise your hand. And there are some chats in the, those who are online may please put your questions in the chat box. We'll read it out for Professor Unni. Yeah. Yeah, those who are online can also ask. I think it doesn't prevent you from, just like what someone already did. It was nice. That's such clarificatory question. Yeah, it's open. Yeah.
In the, if I may just point, just say that in the chat, I find Kirti Nakre has asked a question, which in a nutshell, it is to Professor Unni, saying she is interested in knowing about interstate differences and the, especially in the availability of policy support. She mentioned that, I mean, she says that you have mentioned a survey among Delhi students. What did it show? That's what she wants to know.
Yeah, I think you can start so that in between questions will be brewed.
Thank you for that question. So if state-wise, we didn't do that analysis, but I can tell you because I look at this data all the time. Gujarat state is one of the states, and Maharashtra, which are very, and Tamil Nadu to some extent, but they are less so much. Yeah, so the Gujarat state is very proactive with regard to entrepreneurship. So there, even their IAS officers and their ministers and, they have literally have lobbies in Delhi. And they are just sitting there and looking at, what is it that subsidies or what are the policies which the government of India is doing, which they can take to us. And then they proactively go meet the particular, suppose it is the pharma industries and chemical industries, what is growing like, like anything in Gujarat. So they look for that and then they go and speak. So every industry has an association in Gujarat, every industry, whether it is light engineering or it is pharma, chemicals, whatever, they have IT, they have associations. So these people literally act as a liaison between the state, these entrepreneurs in the association, industry associations, and the government of India. And so whatever policy comes there, the first beneficiaries of that will be our entrepreneurs in Gujarat. So that makes a big difference. So if you look at entrepreneurship across the states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu is there, but not the way they have entrepreneurship in this thing. And of course, you have the IT hub in Bangalore and Hyderabad and so on. So those are IT hubs. Gujarat has not done so well in the thing, but we have started something in Gujarat called Gift City, which was not doing very well. Now we have a lot of policies literally bringing finance and finance related things to Gift City. So it is a gifted state, Gujarat, for whatever reason. So that is the story about the states. And your second question was, what was the second question?
Yeah, there's only one question. Only one question, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh, the Delhi survey. Yeah, so we did a survey of technology, management, and arts colleges, both girls and boys, and who are in the final year of their college. We asked questions like, the chances that you would join, take up entrepreneurship. Obviously, these are, perspective of the future. And one of the things I already told you that, people from better off households and from, family background of business were more likely to say that they want to see it. Another very interesting thing we found was that these technical colleges, engineering colleges, those people didn't want to be entrepreneurs. It was the arts colleges and the other management colleges which were more likely to, and we were wondering why. So the final reason we thought about for that, which we didn't, because the survey was over, we didn't ask them again. Basically, I think the tech people were getting better jobs. They were already getting jobs, they were being placed and so on and so forth. So they went for that. So they were quite clear that they're going to get jobs. They're going to get 100% placement. So they were not there in that market. The management fellows, the other arts people, were the colleges which said, and then for girls, they were very clear that they needed if the support of the family was one of the things that they very strongly said, that with support of the family, they will be, both men and women, girls and boys said that, but the women, chances of them saying that they needed the support. These are some of the highlights that we got. You know, the variation across the different types of disciplines, the variation between boys and girls and by income levels, family background, all this was making a difference to what they thought. The other question we asked was whether the colleges, because a lot of the colleges now are running entrepreneurship courses. They're running, they call entrepreneurs into, they have entrepreneurship cells. So there is this thing called something it's called. They set up entrepreneurship cells in colleges of students, and then they bring in people. So whether that helps or not, we didn't get such a over emphasis on the fact that those courses help. But yeah, it also had an important effect on whether they want to choose entrepreneurship. Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes. Go
Sir,
ahead.
I have a couple of doubts in this regard. One is related with the theoretical underpinning comes under the entrepreneurial economics or entrepreneurial culture. In your presentation, ma'am, you focused on the behavioral aspects on one side and the pure theoretical framework that is developed by Schumpeter on the other side. Is there any other heterodox in perspective, especially heterodox in perspective, is matched with the theoretical underpinning or the conceptual framework of entrepreneurial economics in a broad manner? That is one of my doubt. And another doubt is related with the empirical reality. So you told that some states have more initiatives for the entrepreneurial culture, but looking in our curriculum or the courses that is already available, especially in general higher education level or technical or professional higher education level, whether our courses are promoting this entrepreneurial culture. Last 2-3 years, obviously, some state governments, including government of Kerala, also started some initiatives to develop this entrepreneurial culture. But whether it is applicable to all the sessions of the society or all the sessions of the people, that is another doubt.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
Would you mind introducing yourself, the previous speaker?
Sir, myself, Shanu and Nasser. Currently, I am working as assistant professor in Department of Economics, JN deemed to be University of Bangalore.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
The theoretical underpinnings, like I said, we were looking at both the management literature and the economics literature. So in the management literature, so our focus was on women entrepreneurs. But like I said, in one of my first slides, the focus there is why do they start a business and how do they scale their business? So the whole thing is revolving only around setting up a business, which might be due to an opportunity that they're getting or profit kind of motive. So who sets up a business and why do they set up the business, which is more in terms of opportunity and innovation rather than anything else. But then when we looked at this new thing of within the management literature, like till the 70s, there was no talk about women entrepreneurship, or there was no. So what did the women entrepreneurship literature, which then developed in the 70s slowly and 80s? And you can see, we looked at, if you look at that paper that we have on a review of management literature on entrepreneurship, you can see in the number of journals, how many articles are coming up in on women entrepreneurship beginning, and then afterwards on women entrepreneurship. And you can see that after the 70s, 80s, 90s, the number of studies which are done on women entrepreneurship grow. So what was the key what was the key idea that came out of that management literature? The key idea was that it need not be profit and scaling on which you can measure women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs may operate because they have opportunity, yes. Then if they have opportunity, then you can measure them. How are you measuring success of an entrepreneur? Most of the time when you measure success of an entrepreneur, and because I've been in business schools for such a long time and lived on business campuses, management school campuses, entrepreneurship is only measured in terms of scale, whether they're able to scale up. So if you talk to these IMA graduates, they'll always talk about, our chairperson was saying exactly that. I mean, those successful entrepreneurs are those who go from 1 crore to 500 crore, right? So that becomes the how you are measuring the success of an entrepreneur as by scale, and then by profit. How much is your profit or profitability or whatever of that the thing. Now, like I've showed you this Saka lady or some other ladies there, they are not doing it for the profit, and some of them might not want to scale at all. And if they're necessity entrepreneurs, they don't want to scale at all. They are running the business to the extent that they can, and that is their business. So they are also successful entrepreneurs. If any entrepreneur can hold on to its enterprise for 5 to 10 years, I think that's successful. It doesn't matter whether they scaled over those 5 to 10 years. So your measurement is also depending on your theory. Your theory is saying that a successful entrepreneur is the one that is able to scale, which is able to make profits and so on. And management schools are teaching you that. Good. It should scale, but there may be other motive. One motive is that it's necessity and they just want to remain there. They don't want to scale. The other thing is that they might be looking for a social enterprise. They don't want to, just take up anything. They might just take up what they think is a need. Like we have other entrepreneurs here in this book, which talk about a lady who starts, using organic manure, and she does this vermicompost. And she started it for fun, and then soon discovers that this is a very important thing. And so she started this thing, and she's able to convert it into a business, then which scales and so on. But vermicompost. So she is just, it was not necessarily the thing that anyone would take up, but she just felt that that was the enterprise that she needed to do. There were others which found that, they're doing, one lady came back from the US and she had pets, and then she figured out that there's nothing here who looks after pets. Now that's not a story that I like very much, because that pet thing is, it's this thing to a higher class of people. But yes, a pet is also requires some, needs. So then starting a pet shop. So these are all ideas, also maybe a business opportunity, but they might be people who just don't want to do these two things. They don't want to scale, and they don't necessarily want to be at that level of profits. They are also successful entrepreneurs. So your theory then, because of your theory, the data that you get, the definitions that you have, the measurement that you have is all dependent on the theory. And if the theory is this, you have to somehow demolish that, then only you will come to this other category of people who are also entrepreneurs, in my way of looking at it. I hope I answered part of your question.
We have some questions from offline. Yeah, left.
So, ma'am, it's a very interesting topic, and I think I learned a lot from your presentation. Actually, I would like to share some of the issues of Kerala. Actually, in Kerala, the Kudumbashri entrepreneurs, there are I think more than lakhs. And most of them are running their business more than 5 to 7 years or 10 years. So can we call them as a successful entrepreneur, and their scale is low?
Definitely, but there, let's say that very strong government support. Okay, I've seen a lot of these Kudumbashri entrepreneurs, and also I've seen in Thrissur, I enjoy going into the rural areas and, looking at what kind of activities are happening there. There is this thing called group farming. They call them joint liability groups. They basically started self-help groups. They take, Kerala has this problem. It was my MPhil thesis, incidentally, in Center for Development Studies, where, I'm the senior of your Professor Joseph. My MPhil thesis was about cropping pattern in Kerala and the changing cropping. This is in the early 80s, where we saw this shifting from paddy towards bananas and coconut and other things.
Diversified many industries now.
Yes.
Many.
No, so in this group entrepreneurship, supported by Kudumbashri and also by the local panchayats, they take over the lands which are being left fallow. So one of the big things you see now, earlier when we came to Kerala, there would be lush green paddy fields. And most of the paddy fields in Thrissur and those areas, or it's just lying.
The construction industry also they have been engaging now.
They've been taking over. Yeah. So definitely Kudumbashri is running very well, and it is getting, but remember that thing, support from the government, and a government which supports that enterprise. We don't have a Kudumbashri in Gujarat. Okay. So we don't have, Kudumbashri was originally a poverty elevation program. I've seen Kudumbashri when it first started. It was a small poverty alleviation
For
program.
women entrepreneurs also.
And I've
That's very
seen
important.
women entrepreneurs who were, doing digitalizing RTO records. I've even seen that done by Kudumbashri. Yeah.
Pasha.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation. It was really nice and informative. So, one observation I would like to make from your presentation was it was interesting to see that in your graph, since we're talking about the middle class household, it sort of there was no variation within men and within women. When you talk about no entrepreneurship and then need-based and opportunity-based, so that sort of defied the traditional economic theory between wage and return. So I would like your, opinion on that. And also relationship and gender of the role model, could that be an important factor in this, whole picture? And also there could be some special cases where women, it may seem voluntary that they are sort of not wanting to scale up, but there might be, other characteristics at play that sort of molds them into thinking that, okay, maybe I don't want to scale up. So these are my questions. Thank you.
So on the role model thing, I'd like to say that we didn't get, at least in this data set, whether the role model was male or female or so on. So that's something that we can't answer. And the variation in particularly, there is a large variation in the opportunity between the genders and the income levels. But in the necessity thing, there was less variation. So that means there are a lot of men also in most of the income brackets, which are necessity entrepreneurs. So it's not like necessary entrepreneurs is a woman thing, right? So necessary entrepreneurs are existing, people who think that they are doing it not because they are not able to get anything else. But if they are supported, and they can also grow into, more profitable enterprises over a period of time.
Yeah. We have 9 more minutes. I think perhaps if you want to conclude at 1 o'clock, we will leave to chairman, to the chairperson, and I have some questions which maybe at the end, before thanks, I will take it for the lunch table. Since
Okay.
our chairperson wants to leave at 1 o'clock, let us be disciplined. Yeah, over to you, sir. And for you also, please remember, your job is actually a double role. In fact, you know that double role, discussant and chairperson.
Yeah. So thank you. And, this has been a very interesting session for me personally, because this is a subject on which I have had an interest for quite some time. So just before I just want to make a couple of responses to some of the points raised by Professor Unni. One of those was the explanations about why enterprises linger on despite poor performance, despite low returns. And some answers were offered by her. But this is not only at the lower end of the size spectrum. Across India, I find this happens even in SMEs, so which are of reasonable scale and size and investment. So here based on experiential and some anecdotal information, what I can say is the answers fall into two broad categories. One is that in India, it's very difficult to wind up a business. It's very difficult to shut down a business. And, it's all very well for people to say, okay, the business is not doing well, so wind it up. It's not an easy task, especially if you have a factory and if you have 50 employees and other things. It's a Herculean task. And therefore, many enterprises keep limping along because of the fact that, there simply seems to be no other way out. And the second is related to the first, but also even where it's unrelated to the first is in our society, with possibly the exception of Gujarat, which as Professor Unni says, seems to be more, they have more of an affinity to business and entrepreneurship. In most of the rest of the country, there is a stigma on failure. And this is inculcated right from our education, from our school education system itself. You know, as you all know, if sometimes you go in to visit a friend and you think there has been a death in the family, actually all that has happened is that the 10-year-old daughter has not done well in her Hindi paper in the term exams, internal exams of the school. But from judging from everybody's expression, so failure, this conditioning in our country. So can you imagine if somebody has gone and taken a loan and started an enterprise and it has not, it's not working? There is a lot riding on it. I personally have been in that position where when there were a few years when my enterprise looked like it was going to fail. And I could see that even, you know, friends and others did not want to, were trying to distance themselves from me. It was not my imagination. I actually felt it, because of the fact that I was treated as a failure. So I think one of the reasons why we have this this kind of twilight zone, a phantom zone, where so many companies continue to linger on despite the fact that they are, for all intents and purposes, dead, but they seem to be in a kind of phantom state. So that's one. Then I found some of the findings of Professor Unni's studies among the various colleges and the research, field research, which has done, very interesting. And I feel that there should be a lot more such field studies and research and case studies. Both, and when you're, especially in the case of entrepreneurship, I think it will be very important to do micro level, in-depth case studies, rather than go for cross-sectional data, which will be also very difficult to come by. So, for example, the fact that technical students are less, you know, interested in becoming entrepreneurs because of the fact that they have better job offers and job prospects compared to management and art students, for whom the market is much more uncertain and who seem to be more ready to go in for entrepreneurship. Then, and I just want to make some general observations, which are not in specific responses to Professor Unni, and it's actually more in the nature of that there are some very basic questions in my mind. After leaving the administrative service at the age of 30 and plunging into entrepreneurship, and then, you know, being considered to have, you know, been very lucky and having succeeded against the odds, I found actually that, like me, there were many other success stories and I'm here not talking about the smaller end of the spectrum. I'm not talking specifically at all about the informal sector, where entrepreneurship and self-employment are have to be lumped together into one category. That's a whole different subject. So my observations are to do with what is conventionally understood as, so I'm talking about industrial enterprises, business enterprises, mostly, say, you can say in the formal sector, which are, so with respect to them, the perception is, for example, that say if you take Gujarat and Kerala, these are the two states to compare. So Gujarat is an entrepreneurial state and Kerala is whatever is the polar opposite of that. And everybody thinks the outcomes in both states should explain this, one of these basic differences between these two states. But unfortunately, if you look at the economic outcomes, whether it is gross state domestic product per capita, whether it is gross state value added, whether it is number of industrial units, and I'm not talking about, you know, especially if you discount the few very large enterprises from that and just look at the rest of the sector, the evidence is much more mixed. And where I'm coming to one fact is, perception seems to be very strong. So the perception we have is Gujarat is an entrepreneurial state and Kerala is not an entrepreneurial state. It's all full of job seekers who all want government jobs, etc. But if you look at all the developmental outcomes, and I am not only referring to HDI, I'm looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17. So here is an area where we need a lot more research. The evidence coming now, I'm talking about current evidence and reported in the papers, etc. Both the Niti Aayog, which can hardly be called a friend of Kerala, and of the Kerala government at least, has reported consistently that the best startup ecosystem in India is that of Kerala's. And this has also received recently, 2 days ago, an international recognition in terms, and this is outcome based. It's not just program based, it's outcome based in terms of the number of new enterprises registered, new startups which have gone for Series A funding, which have been able to scale to the next level, etc. So that's one. Second, very interesting piece of information. When people discuss Kerala, even in the media or socially, one of the characteristics of Kerala is supposed to be, showing that the Kerala model is failing is people want to leave the state and go, especially they want to go abroad for studies and go abroad for jobs. Now, my information, current information is that the state which is far ahead of Kerala in that respect is Gujarat, where almost every family has somebody who is abroad or wants to go abroad. And anecdotally, there is some incredible evidence which is there of families which are doing business here, but still you find the young people want to take up any job in Canada or in the US. So I'm saying this is something, the perception here of Kerala, so people are ready to believe that this must be because Kerala is failing in some way. But when the same thing happens in Gujarat, there is no such perception. It seems to be, the explanation will be something else. Then, so I think in terms of the informal sector and where the non-formal sector where the entrepreneurship is more necessity driven, but at the same time it's very powerful, is a subject on which many commentators across the world are beginning to look at, because the feeling that entrepreneurship is a phenomenon which is very highly developed in, say, the developed and the affluent countries, and is not there in the underdeveloped countries, or the developing countries like India or middle income countries like India, is not true, because like many commentators like Ha-Joon Chang of Cambridge and all that have pointed out in many memorable talks that you want to see entrepreneurship, you should just go out and see how the informal sector in India or the dabbawalas in Bombay and there are, it's been so many celebrated case studies across. And like one of the questioners raised, one of the outstanding examples of entrepreneurship at that level is, and which is on a statewide basis, is Kudumbashree. Now, Kudumbashree was supported initially, continues to be supported by the state, and I think that's a very correct thing. But I think to consider that Kudumbashree is, I feel it has struck roots, and that the entrepreneurship bug the seed has been planted in the women, in the lakhs of women who are members of all the various societies and JLGs which have been formed. So I feel here is a lot of ground for research, because otherwise what happens is we are still left with perceptions and anecdotal information. And therefore we need this to be buttressed and supported by a lot of field research. So one of my major takeaways, and I will end with that, from this very interesting paper presentation by Professor G. Moluni, is that there is every attempt at doing field research throws up very interesting data, which will only enrich the public policy initiatives which must come forward if we are truly to unlock the spirit of entrepreneurship, which is there in everybody. I don't believe there are some parts of India which are entrepreneurial and some parts which are not. This is as unreliable a category as that there are some parts of India which are very warlike and martial, and some other parts which are not. These are all very traditional views which have been I think, discredited. And so we need to now look at these things afresh. From a lot of these comments are coming from my personal experience and observation and not from research or data. So I once again would like to express my appreciation to Professor Jimol Unni for having shown the spotlight on a much neglected aspect of economics and economic activity within our country. And I believe this needs much more research and attention in future also. Thank you.
I think that was a marvelous way of summing up the whole thing, and anything which I say will be superfluous, but still I was keeping my fingers crossed, Sri Balagopal, because I was thinking that you will be asking, KJ, what happened to that makerspace inaugurated in GIFT? Because this particular seminar happens in a place where this 5-acre campus was actually housing a manufacturing unit. And I came over here as a part of my PhD to interview the people. Now, 2 years ago, in fact, I wanted, because now it has become an academic place. Now, my question is we actually inaugurated, and also we worked together with the 1 lakh entrepreneur scheme of the chief minister, involved in training the entrepreneurs during the previous government. And after that, in fact, Sri Balagopal, I'm sorry about it, first name, sorry. Sri Balagopal, and we discussed, and we actually we inaugurated, Dr. T.M. Thomas Isaac inaugurated this maker space here. The whole idea was that, Professor Unni, you said that in Delhi, the engineers are not really into this area, but in Kerala, my perception, of course, my perception may be wrong, the whole startup ecosystem thinks that startup can come only from engineers. So in fact, I was thinking, I talked to Dr. Isaac at the instance of Sri Balagopal. So why don't we give some opportunity for the arts and science students within Trivandrum at least? If you want to have a startup, anything to begin, you come over here, Sunday and Saturday, we will have mentoring by Balagopal and others. A lot of the people agreed. So we have not actually, when we are actually going to restart that. And I think during the lunchtime, I would like to have your advice. Of course, Sri Balagopal is always with us. And during the lunchtime, another thing which you should be reflecting for us is that, for example, I have studied state electronics development corporations in the country in the 80s. And I found that those who have done well were the ones where the states were supporting, states were pushing and hand-holding. And when the country got opened up, when the state withdrew, everyone collapsed. Now we know Keltron actually survives on commission. You know the story about all that. Now the question is, I think that this may not happen perhaps to Kudumbasri, because Kudumbasri operates in an altogether different area. Anyway, that's a different issue. I wish and hope doesn't happen to Kudumbasri. And it was a marvelous day. I think I want to say that at least one enterprise comes out of Sri Balagopalji from our initiative from this campus. Before I handing over to my coordinator who did the hard work for the organizing the seminar, I pass it on to Dr. Kiran Kumar. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Hello.
Yes, please.
I have a small question. Is it time, or can I go on?
For lunch, please go ahead. No, please
Sure.
go ahead. I think my
Thank you.
question.
So I am Ramakrishnan, research associate at the IIT Kanpur.
Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you for your presentation. So actually, my one question is that, as per the GM India report, the total entrepreneurial activity rate in India is currently at 14.4% in 2021. And the major part of this is attributed to the boom of startups in India, thanks to the Startup India mission. And the major activity is the strong startup ecosystem is because of the incubators, the networks, the angel investors supporting, and from every institutions like IIM Ahmedabad. Now every IIT and IIM has an incubator, and many institutions have an incubator. So, and those institutions, many alumni from those institutions are coming up with the support of their institution, they are starting their own startups in their campus itself, and many co-working spaces are organized. So do you think these aspects can be incorporated in your research as well? What are your views on this, ma'am?
Yeah, there are a lot of incubators, but all these incubators are not doing that well. IIM is definitely doing very well. IIM Ahmedabad. But definitely any kind of support that can be provided. So the incubator doesn't mean that the person comes and stays there. It is the incubators are, the support systems that they can garner in terms of not just mentors, but in terms of credit, in terms of getting into the government schemes and so on, is a very important part of the. We have one. Our university has a incubation center called Venture Studio. They also do a lot of programs of training entrepreneurs and supporting them on various these things. It's definitely one. So we can just call it part of the ecosystem. So part of the ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem that India is developing has been this. So the DST, that's the Department of Science and Technology, supports incubators, but then those are technology-based incubators. When I was in IRMA, we were trying to set up an incubator there. We did start, and it's called iSeed. The government of India supports the setting up of incubators, and they do help. But then not all of them have been successful in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And one more thing, like IIM Ahmedabad is successful because it has been able to raise huge amounts of money in terms of, so if they take up something like renewable energy, and they'll create a fund which is called Infuse, and then they're able to, get huge amount of crores. I can't even tell you how many crores of rupees, and then they fund startups in that particular area. So now they've also started taking up agriculture related and so on. So they raise funds, not from the government, from other sources, and then they support enterprises. So that is a different kind of effort which can be made on a private basis rather than supporting from the government.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we come to the last part of today's webinar. On behalf of GIFT, I would like to thank Professor G. Moloney for taking your time and joining us, being the governing body member as well, so for joining us and giving a very insightful lecture, and very, very, very good, very valid insights for policy making on entrepreneurship in India. Thank you for coming and talking to us, ma'am. And I would like to also thank Sri Balagopal for taking his time out of very busy schedule. So you have always been with us whenever we needed your support. You have been a patron for us, and thank you for taking your time and giving your own practitioner or a real world entrepreneur's view on the talk. Thank you. We can't appreciate you more. I would like to thank Sri Padma Subramanian. Great to see you after, Mrs. Padma Subramanian. Great to see you after a few years. Thank you for coming and joining us for today's talk. I would like to thank our faculty members for the support. And I would like to thank the participants, especially online participants, for asking very relevant questions and contributing to the discussion. And also I would like to participate our students and interns who joined us here. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our IT support team, without which these online webinars would not be possible. Lunch is waiting for us, so I'm concluding. Thank you once again.
Professor Sri Balagopal, I think I would like to we'll have an opportunity to have a lunch with you in the near future.
Sure. I look forward to that.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.